Good evening. I'd like to call this committee of the whole to session. I thank you for being here, whether under duress or free will. I thank you for being here either way. Tonight, we are going to start our budget discussions, and I wanted to start by giving a little bit of what we've kind of come up with. Because we don't have what our revenue will be yet, we thought we'd start with expenses that both known and wished for. And so the reason that you see some department heads here is so that they can help us. There are some asks for new employees, and they're here if you would want to hear from them to share why they feel they need those new employees. I do want my council members to know that I was hoping tonight this could be kind of Denise giving us what the expenses are, answering any expense questions that you might have so far. And then next Wednesday that we would start with, I see tabs in some books. And so I know full confession, I just got mine today. So I just started reading mine today, but it's pretty colorful. I haven't finished. So next Wednesday, I would like to have more of a council discussion during our work session of having you say, what if we did this instead of that? Are we okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, then what do you have to say, Councilmember Green? What do you want? What's your pleasure?
I don't think we have, I'm just in a work session that starts at 5:30 and goes until 6:45. I don't think we have enough time to discuss it.
Well, then we have our next meeting, the Wednesday after that as well, that we can continue that discussion. Councilmember Jacob, are you okay with what I've suggested? Councilmember Worthen?
I'm not sure.
We're gonna have Denise talk to us about the expenses we're gonna.
If we're just here to listen, then I'll watch the recording.
We want to talk about, we want to take an hour change.
Do you want to hear about why they want to have certain employees expanded? I thought that would be helpful to know why Public Works wants 2 new road guys, why Parks wants two maintenance and one. I'm very personally, I need to know about the management position because I thought we already had a couple of people.
Sorry. I want a chance to talk about the things that I found in here that I have questions on.
Okay,
as well.
and we
Okay.
will, this isn't our only opportunity, right? This is the beginning of discussions. And we'll have as many as we need. And we'll either decide that we're going for a truth in taxation or we will be completed by the end of June. Because state code tells us that, so.
I think it's a good place to start.
Okay, we are going to begin with Denise. Who is here and who would you like to have begin? How would you like to proceed with?
What I was
To
hoping
ask.
for is, or what I wasn't hoping for, but what I've prepped for and whatever the council's will is, I will go with because I'm prepared either way. If I could have 10 minutes to give you just some introduction to some information that I've collected over the last week. And then I have provided summary slides for each department. So as you ask your questions, if we want to go through the budget book and go department by department, I can answer those questions as we go through the departments if you want to. I wasn't prepared to just sit here and present to you. We want this open discussion and dialogue, but I wanted to have something ready for us to focus that discussion on one department and not be flipping through, like trying to find where everybody is going. So if we could do that together, we could say, let's start with the council office, or let's start with the mayor's office, and then maybe ask all of your tabbed questions during that time if possible. Is that okay? I'm not trying to do anything except that maybe organize this discussion a bit.
I like that.
Okay.
I'm fine with that. So begin your 10 minutes and then what I will do is I will let council members, if they have a department they want to begin with, we will do that.
That'd be great. Okay, so quickly, let's go through these slides, Ellen, if you don't mind. So the first thing, there's a couple of changes that I found as we were reviewing the budget. One of them is that we did not put in an estimate for this year for our cost on elections and non-departmental. So that'll bring our fund balance down for this year a little bit. I'm just bringing those to your attention because I will change them in the adopted budget that you will adopt next week in the tentative budget. These are housekeeping items. The other thing is we were noticed by the administrative office of the courts, a maximum on the judge's salary, which I did not have until last week. And so the salary that we were proposed was higher than allowed because we gave him the COLA and the merit increase that's all the other employees would get. So we're reducing his salary to the maximum allowed by the AOC. That'll save us $8,800 in next fiscal year. Some other things, when we put the consolidated fee schedule in your tentative budget, we accidentally increased impact fees. Those cannot be increased without council action and an impact fee study. And so that increase will be removed in your tentative budget as you adopt it next week. And then the building permit fee increase has been asked to be removed by Scott and Lane, who is our building official. And I would agree after speaking with him on that removal. And then the miscellaneous minimum permit increase, which is like water heaters, small mechanical kind of things, to remove that increase to incentivize our public to continue to get those permits. Our adoption process, I want to have a quick discussion from you. I know that each of you has spoken to me individually that there are some items that you feel like if are included in the budget, you will vote the budget no on the budget. They're all different. They're all very different. And they're all, I know you haven't said anything. There's a couple that haven't said anything, but I have heard from 4 of you at least. What I'm wondering is if we can change this adoption process slightly and allow you to support certain pieces of the budget and maybe vote no on others if you decide that that's a stance you want to take.
I do want to let you know, council, that will take longer because some of us sometimes don't like it when our agenda gets longer, but that will take you longer. But that is a way to facilitate you being able to say what you agree with and what you disagree with in an orderly manner.
So at the end of June, if we want to go to if we end up going to truth in taxation, we could just hold the general fund budget open and adopt all the other funds. so that they would be standing budgets. And then the only thing that you would really have to work on would be the general fund budget. We could break out utilities into a separate ordinance so that if someone has an issue with a utility transfer or dumpster fees, that they can vote no on that particular portion or ordinance instead of the entire budget as a whole. CIP could be broken out separately and special revenue funds could be broken out separately. So what we would do is bring you separate ordinances adopting those funds that are included in your entire city budget. This is allowed, but it would be something that I would ask if you want to support. You may think about it, but next week we're going to bring the tentative for you to adopt. So if you want to do that during the tentative session, we can do that, or if you just want to do it at the final process.
Does anyone have input on that?
I'm fine with separating it out.
So I have a question on that. Wages or salaries carry over into all the budgets. And if that's something that we're going to be discussing and is a major cause of the property tax increase, requested property tax
True.
increase, I don't see how we can separate that out without
Good point.
commingling there a little bit. So
We could probably separate the CIP fund out by itself and the special revenue funds because they don't have allocated costs. But you're correct. Thank you. The utilities and the general fund are probably closely tied because of the transfer and the allocated costs. So maybe we'll just bring it all together. All right. It's just something to think about. Let's go to the next slide, please. I have looked up all of the tentative budgets that have been adopted so far and put together a proposed tax increase slide for you so that you can see where other cities have landed. These are current fiscal year 2023 tentative budgets. You can see that the majority of cities are going to a property tax increase this year, with the exception of those smaller ones, the Riverton, Provo, Orem, and Sandy. Our property tax increase is in green right now. That does not mean that's the amount of a property tax increase. It only means the difference between last year's property tax and this year's proposed property tax. A portion of that will be taken up by new growth, and I'm pretty confident in that. We have some new growth that'll hit our tax rolls. I do not know that number yet and will not know that number until June 8th. So I expect, though, that it will be about $500,000, which would bring that tax increase down to about 9%. Next slide. This is just a chart that shows you what those revenue sources support or what services they support. And you can see that sales tax supports the majority of our services throughout our city, all of streets, a portion of parks, all of fire, and about 25% of police. Property tax pays for about 75% of police, and that's it. And that's with the proposed increase. If that $2 million increase does not go through, then only about 68% of the police is funded with property tax. Okay, next slide. We received a slide at a conference that I was at a couple weeks ago. It's from the Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute, warning us that consumer sentiment has dropped considerably, and it is continuing to drop as the economy changes. They liked to call the economy change an economic resort. I'm not sure what that really means, but we'll see. So I wanted to share this information with you from them, that we have been very conservative in our sales tax revenue, doing that year over year increase. That's an average based on our last 10 years of sales tax collections. And so I'm confident in our number, but I am seeing some of the cities go exactly against that and say they're going to continue with 20% tax increases over the next 2 years to avoid a tax increase. If the funds come in, great, but if they don't, there is no recourse because there's no going back to a property tax increase after the June 30th deadline. Next slide. This is our employees to population ratio. These are our FTEs, so full-time employees to 1,000 population. We have the lowest count of employees per 1,000 population of any of these cities here. You can see Salt Lake City has 13 employees for every 1,000 people in their city. We excluded their airport and other things, but this would include utilities and general government. But I thought it was important as we're discussing adding employees to our employee base. Next slide.
Hang on one second. Can you
Go back.
show that one again? Or I guess it's on the next slide too. Just the concept behind this would be interesting because I mean, obviously Salt Lake is Skiwampus. Would be interesting to compare. I don't know if this number exists, but Salt Lake City's daytime population is much larger than their
True.
residential population, and our daytime population is much smaller than our residential population. So I'd be curious to see what the full-time employees is too, like that average population number. Like I don't know if that number exists. Like
Daytime population's tough. We used it a lot at
There-
the Transit Authority, and yeah,
yeah,
but
there's this
it is
number and
absolutely
there's
a
this
balance.
number, and where's that in between? And then how do those numbers average out to that?
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see that.
But I think too that some of these numbers also have cities that have that same kind of dynamic, right? Like a South
for
Jordan
sure.
and a Harriman.
It's
and-
just, it looks like Salt Lake is so much huger. Well, Salt Lake's daytime population is so much huger, and
Yeah.
and West Jordan and Harriman and Sandy and probably even West Valley's daytime population is smaller than their residential population. So I'd be curious to see kind of if that justifies this kind of a spread.
Really good question. Yeah, really good question. Yes, you did. Next. And this is just the data that I used behind it. I'll provide this slideshow or this presentation for you, and you can look at it and have it for your information. But it gives you the population. We use the sales tax population. So that's from the 2020 census that's been adjusted slightly. And then the number of FTEs. We looked at their budgets, and we also called the entities and asked them. So next. This was the next slide that we got from that same conference, and I thought I'd share it with you. It's a budget brief from their perspective that both skilled and unskilled labor is increasingly hard to find, and that a portion of that labor shortage is influenced by permanent demographic changes. We know that, right? With the baby boomer retirements, with the economy resorting, it seems that some of the baby boomers are coming back into the market, but there is definite permanent changes that are going on right now. And other portions can be impacted by real wage increases, which we'll see, and we have seen with the movement with our public safety wages and our compensation study. There's hope, and it's been really nice to be able to meet with the employees and see that hope in them. Some takeaways: focus on keeping your productive employees. It's much easier than finding new ones, and that's absolutely the case. And the other thing that they asked us to remind our elected officials is to understand that the dramatic sales increases are partially illusionary and need to be reserved for increased costs. And we know that. We've talked about that a lot. Next slide. We've shown you this slide. We are presenting to you a balanced general fund budget. Our revenues are equal to expense, but they will require a property tax increase of about $2 million. Next slide. Our budget expansion. This is our existing personnel. This does not include new positions. So your baseline existing personnel budget for the general fund was $53.9 million. I apologize. This is not just the general fund. This is overall. This is the entire city. With a 6% cost of living adjustment, that adds about $2.6 million to the budget. Part of it is benefits and part of it is wages. The merit increase program, which is pay for performance, is about $1 million. The market study or compensation study to bring employees up to last year's wages. So that market study was done with July of 2021 wages and then meeting our wages as they currently stand. So we looked at them from that perspective, and then we applied the COLA after that, but that is not included in the compensation study. They are very separate numbers. So the compensation study is saying, what should we have been paying them last year based on what everybody else was paying them last year, or this year, I guess, this budget year, or last budget year. And then what should we be paying them now? So that's that market study. That's about $1.1 million. And then the career ladder, which you're aware of, is about $500,000. So that changes $5.2 million overall from that 53.9 to that 59.1.
Okay, question real quick. 1.1 million for the market study, but in my market study book, it's 887,000.
because it doesn't include. It does not include, that budget book included only the general fund, I think. Like that number included the general fund. It wasn't utilities. I
Making me do
think.
my math all over again.
I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding.
We also adjusted seasonal wages because we were not able to get seasonals from $12 to $14 an hour to $15 to $19 an hour. Next slide. We have shown you this slide before, so I won't go over it, but this is the new personnel requests, and we can speak about that when we are starting to talk about our departments. Next slide. All right, and that's it. So this is kind of the format of the slides that I did for summary for each department. I will not go through them. We can go through them as you want to discuss, but it will allow you to see budgets maybe a little more condensed so that you can really focus on, well, what was it that changed? And then what was the impact on the comp study by department? So if you'll, and we go like 5 more slides or 6 maybe, because most of the comps, there's one, never mind, go back one. Like the public affairs department, the comp study reclassified the position that we called senior digital something into a public information manager. Both comps brought that position up about 5%. And then the graphics and web designer, we were under market by about 10%. So you'll see that the comp study will tell you how far were we behind market last year for each position that was reclassified by department. And I can answer those questions for you, but I will not go through these. I'm going to just open it up for questions, and Chair Whitelock, you can lead that discussion however you please, and I'd be happy to answer.
Do any of you have department specific questions where we have department heads here? If you do, go ahead.
Isaac, tell me what you're looking for new employees. And then my question is I know you're having a hard time hiring, and maybe Brian, this goes to you possibly as well. What is the likelihood of being able to find people to fill the positions?
Mike.
Sorry, thank you. So Melissa, the first position that when talking with the administration of what I have seen in the department this year, my first priority was asking for help for a landscape architect / project manager. And then there are 2 maintenance tech positions, which are the full-time maintenance park staff.
Okay.
If I can kind of step back for a sec and just explain, I know you guys have had numbers thrown at you for years and years, and I don't want to get into that rut. But just to put into perspective, the park staff at this facility just here at City Hall and Veterans Memorial Park and the rodeo grounds in 2009 had 1 full-time crew supervisor, 2 full-time staff, and 7 seasonal staff to maintain the 80+ acres that are here on this property. Over time, to make up for the needs at other locations, most of our staff, this one for the example, now we have 1 crew supervisor, 1 full-time staff, and 5 seasonals to do the same amount of work that they were doing 10 years ago with more staff. I share that with you because the parks department has kind of been the catch-all for years and years. You know, we need more help to plow the sidewalks or the streets. Okay, well, parks can help because they're not that busy in the wintertime, which is a half truth. We have, we have events. Okay, well, we're going to take the park staff to do that, which is 12 to 14 weekend hours or nighttime hours from that staff. So when we have the same amount of staff now as we had in 2009 with 115% more properties to maintain. The entire park staff is in a state of panic all the time. Rather than doing our planned maintenance and being able to make recommendations to administration of here's issues, here's the evaluations, and here's what our master plan should be for the rodeo grounds. We are putting fires out day in and day out. Dave Naylor, as the parks manager, not only is he trying to direct his full-time staff, he's being pulled in 10 different directions of trying to figure out, we've got new developments coming on that they're proposing trails, hours and hours of time that he's having to put towards that rather than dealing with the maintenance needs of, as the manager, what the day-to-day management needs are for parks. Parks has been pulled into inspections of developments because there wasn't anybody in engineering or engineering inspectors that were qualified to do certain things. So at first, Dave was that person. He is such a knowledgeable guy. But now we're asking our irrigation specialists to do most of the irrigation inspections. And we only have 2 irrigation specialists for 1,200 main water connections in the city. On top, asking him to do those inspections on top of trying to maintain those 1,100 units, not including the sprinkler systems. Our urban forester, we only have 1 urban forester and 1 full-time staff to help him. Now he's being pulled into these same meetings to discuss what types of trees, who's going to, when they're installed, have they been installed correctly? Are they the right trees? What recommendations do you want for those types of things? So the priority of that position is to lift a little bit off of a lot of people. There's a proposed org chart that shows that Dave and the crew supervisors are the day-to-day operations, and he's the manager over that, where he can now focus on long-term planning, maintenance, contracts, and making sure that the items that need to be done in those contracts are being completed. Where this landscape architect project manager is able to help out not just parks, but also the other divisions that need their expertise and discussion in these development discussions and inspections and planning. The other 2 positions that we are asking for specifically are to help the Veterans Memorial area, because it is, you can see every day in and day out, this is one of the most heavily used areas. And to keep up on that is, this is kind of what I foresee as the crown jewel of the city as far as parks goes. It's one of the newer parks. It's got a lot of nice amenities, but we're lacking in several areas for maintenance. The other person would go to help with the trails, because that's where the biggest add in land that we've received. Just to give you perspective, in 2002 we had 61 acres. 2012 we went to 477 acres, and now we're at about 550 acres in trails and weed management areas around the city. And that, a lot of that is due to development. Even though it's not a park, we do have areas where there's a retention area that if it doesn't get maintained, it gets reported to code enforcement, and we end up out there anyway trying to keep those weeds down. The other part is our cemetery, which is a different budget, has sold and buried over 100 lots every year over year for the last 3 years at least. And 10 years ago, it was easy for 4 seasonals to hop on lawnmowers and go up and down those rows and mow that park. Those 4 people, it had taken 2 days to do the cemetery. Now it's taking those 4 people 4.5 days to do that same amount of work because there's so many more headstones and obstacles that they have to work around. So that's in a long nutshell, the challenges that Parks is facing. If I can say, I still haven't been here. I don't feel like I've been here that long still. It's going to be 2 years this July. I like my job. But I love and respect the people that I work with, and that includes you guys. But the thing I've experienced over the last 2 years is everyone here at the city is stretched so thin. It's near impossible to meet the expectations of anyone in the city. When we have half the amount of staff to maintain this area to what it was 10 years ago, we still get those calls saying, hey, there's a dead spot. Hey, there's a wet spot. But quite frankly, it takes 2 to 3 days for one of our staff to be able to get to that fire because there's so many other fires in line to deal with that. I totally understand the challenges and respect your guys' decisions, but that's my perspective and the proposal that I've bringing to you.
Denise, is the Parks org chart in here and I'm just not finding it?
Yeah, like that I was looking for it.
I can find everyone
It
else.
is, it's in the org chart section under public services. So let me find the page number.
Okay.
The second part of that question was
Page 51.
higher.
Thank you.
You're struggling as it
Yeah.
is. Where are you at as far as being?
So right now we have 14 open positions out of the 34 that we have available. We do have 4, maybe 5 that will be starting as soon as they get out of school in the next 2 weeks. So we're getting close, but we're continually short the number of staff, seasonal staff that we have. We are better than last year, and the increase in wage is really what has allowed that to happen.
So is the management position you're looking for, is it equal to Mr. Naylor?
No,
It's above Mr. Naylor.
no, it's below.
It's below.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I remember right, the park manager is like a 74 and this position is a 64.
So is Naylor operations or?
Dave would be the operations
Operations.
with a superintendent underneath him helping with that. And then the parks landscape architect manager would oversee the urban forester and the irrigation side of things, along with all of the development.
Okay, and we're calling that a Parks project manager.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they would be
Okay.
very similar, like both reporting to Isaac, but there is a pay differential between the two positions.
You should just read this email that I got today.
Oh, sorry, it just jumped.
Oh. Oh,
Sorry.
no, it's this last one. It just talks about a couple of different ways. And thanks them for their awesome work.
I was gonna say, hopefully it's a nice thing.
It is. You should read this. No, it is nice. Thank you. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Aspel, Melissa?
No, that helps tremendously.
Council Chair, can I share something with you about that park project manager position, if I may?
Sure.
The need for that position was driven home to me once on a ride along with Isaac. We were out looking at some different sites that the city owned. And there was a site along a future arterial. It was along back facing walls, and there was a gap of about 25 feet between the sidewalk and the wall that was dedicated to the city as part of the overall development. And it was an area to be landscaped, and it was pretty new. It was only about 5 years, 4 or 5 years after development, and it was struggling. The landscape on it was struggling. I talked to Isaac about it. He said, this is a problem we have because this land was dedicated to us. The landscaping was dedicated to us. And in the development review and inspection process, we didn't have anybody who could inspect it to make sure the proper topsoil was put in before the land was given to us and the grass was put on top of it. And now we are forever trying to maintain this area properly but it wasn't developed properly to begin with. And so our parks maintenance staff were playing catch up because we didn't do some preventative inspection before it was delivered to the city. It felt like to me, missing that step now will forever cost us an efficiency down the road. And so I feel like this park project manager position not only will help us accomplish some things that are really important to all of us, like the master planning of the Veterans Park area and that kind of thing, but it will help us do some preventative inspection, catch things on development review, so we're not trying to fix things after the fact.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Austell on this ask? Do you have something else, Isaac?
Sorry, I already gave my mic away, but
You have to learn not to do that, man. It's hard to learn, but you got to learn it.
I did fail to mention on top of some of those numbers I gave you, we also are adding the Big Bend that was deeded over to the city this year. That's almost 70 acres alone. That right now, a lot of it isn't improved, so there isn't a lot of maintenance other than spraying weeds, and we have a contract to do that. But over the next 3 to 4 years, that's going to be a developed area where, again, are going to take more resources. We have the Maple Hills Park that is 10 acres, which is going to require a significant amount of time of staff, along with the north detention fields that are just off of New Bingham, next to the water facility. That's another 8-acre facility that we're going to be responsible to maintain that will be coming online by the end of July. So there's almost 84 acres, if I'm doing close, over 80 acres that we're going to add to our duties this year on top of those other challenges.
You don't need to sleep.
And we got Melissa offering to come mow, so.
I'm going out this weekend.
All right. Any other department heads here that you want to discuss?
Brian, I talked to you about this earlier today, but just want to make sure that you haven't changed your mind. If we drop the 755K for the 5490 roundabout, you're not going to be heartbroken?
I won't be heartbroken. I'll have Greg talk to that too. Sorry to put you on the spot, Greg.
Can you say what page you're on and what you're discussing, please, when you ask your questions?
I don't know what.
But we need to know the purpose of that too. I mean, that's
Page one, it's page 195 in your book, by the way. It's capital project fund. We're looking at spending $755,000 for a roundabout at 5490 west, 7800 south.
Oh, let's save that money. Exit out.
Please.
So that's what, Greg, do you have a?
hold, that's federal money. That's
We do have,
or STIP money.
we do have some STIP money that goes with that. I'm not sure what our promise match is, but I don't know that it's $750,000. Is that what it is, Denise? Okay. So if we did not want to do that, we would either delay that project or we would turn down the grant.
Can you put them more someplace else?
I'm sure Brian always has use for extra money.
Does it have to be a roundabout?
This is allocated by UDOT. So UDOT identifies funding for the project, and then they identify our portion of what we need to fund to get that project. And typically, when you give up a project, it will go back into
Wasatch
the
Front
mix
money.
for everybody under the Wasatch Front, and we'll lose the project. So I think the determination needs to be, do we want to keep the project or not keep the project?
Let's turn it into a signal.
There is a signal.
Yeah, the real question is why, and this is the policy decision, and obviously talking about the 755, but we've got a signal a block to the west at 56th. What's the utility of and maybe we need to look at the traffic engineering studies again, but what's the utility of having that roundabout there it's really to access what?
It's
Maybe a
to-
driveway?
It's to access the commercial area on where the Costa Vida is gonna be, that's opening up like in a week or two.
Oh,
The
And the Pizza Hut,
Starbucks, the
that's right there,
Culver's,
yeah.
the
Yeah,
car
okay, but
wash.
that's all right hand, mostly right hand. But the question
It's
is,
right hand if you're going
Yeah, depends
west.
on which way
If
you're going.
coming from the other end, it's
but
left
the
hand.
real question is the real question is it needed? And the second question, and this is part of the observation, is that the city in at least one general plan and a couple other documents said the goal of the city is to make, or the goal of some of our policies is to make the city more walkable. A roundabout doesn't make the city more walkable. Roundabout moves traffic, moving it east, west, north, south, whatever. But how do you, if you're trying to get people from, let's say, all that higher density housing on the south side of 78th right there, and you want to get them to walk to Culver's, and you put a roundabout there, they aren't going to walk to Culver's, they're going to drive. And so that's just something that as we talk about, I think before we put $755,000 into that intersection, I think we need to have relook at that traffic study and relook at walkability for that area, because I just don't think putting the roundabout there is gonna, roundabout will help the traffic. Here's, and we need help with traffic on 78, don't get me wrong. The roundabout will help with the traffic. The roundabout may not help the city.
It's not going to help the traffic until west of 5600 west is fixed. Otherwise, it's just going to keep the
Well,
backup
we
right
already
there.
get enough complaints about the current roundabout that's there. Are you
It's
gonna
not the
double it?
roundabout. It's not the roundaut that's the problem.
It's not the
fact that
roundabout.
The lane
It's-
disappears
yeah.
right next to the roundabout.
That's the problem.
That roundabout's not a good roundabout.
The
No,
roundabout's
my
not
car
the
was
problem.
totaled in that roundabout.
I disagree, but
But this was a council decision that was made, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, with this roundabout and one on 56 south of 78. It was to make 4 roundabouts to kind of set off that Highlands commercial area as like a place definition kind of a thing. Like when you're between the roundabouts, you're at the Highlands commercial area with a big stoplight in between and stuff like that. And that was a council decision because
I think that was at least 6 years ago.
I've only been on the council for 6 years and I was there. So
It was your beginning though, because I didn't make that decision.
I'm not against the roundabout. I'm
Um,
against it happening before we fix 7800 south.
right. Well, and yeah, that's tough. I don't know where the 78, I've asked about 7800 South fixing. I know it's coming.
it's in design.
But anyway, it wasn't that long ago. Alan was on the council when we did it. It wasn't too.
So
Anyway.
it kind of sounds like the question is this money that we can keep and delay maybe? Because
Yeah.
it sounds like
Yeah.
maybe if we do it now, it makes it worse.
I don't think it would
Sparker,
affect
do
the
you have some
traffic.
answers?
I do. I just want to remind the council that this project is on the UDOT tip list at this point. If we were to move or delay this project, this has political ramifications that could delay funding and future transportation designations from the state for probably a decade. So this is a highly political decision. It's yours to make, certainly,
So
but I
what
want to
you're
make sure
saying-
you're
So
aware.
what you're saying is we may be forced to put in a roundabout because of maybe a bad decision that we had a few years ago, and spend $1.5 million on a roundabout because we're afraid we're going to piss off UDOT.
I
would not
think what
venture to
she's
say
saying is
that.
it would be expedient for us to go ahead and do this now so that we can work with our partners to get 7800 widened past 5600 west. That's what I heard,
Yes.
because we need partnership from
Well,
UDOT.
we already have funding and 7800 South is in design already. The holdup though with 7800 South in design is UDOT, right? Crossing Mountain View.
To give a little status update for the 700 South widening project, the last that I heard, We're working on the environmental study to be finished. You can't actually begin preliminary design or conceptual design on a project until the environmental review process is complete. And we still hadn't completed that. With COVID, there were a lot of challenges to environmental processes because some of those include public hearings, which no longer happen now. So it's time we can finish that. But the last I heard that we were still in the environmental process. We hadn't actually started the actual design yet for that project, but that should be happening soon. So I would think in this budget year, the design will start for the 78 South widening from the Smiths roundabout up to SR 111.
So team, I have Councilmember Councilmember Green, sorry, that would like to get rid of this. Do I have 3 others that would like to get rid of this in this budget?
Doesn't sound like we have much of a choice.
We always
FYI,
have
we
a
have
choice.
$745,000 in matching federal money, CMAQ money on this project from UDOT allocated.
You always have a choice.
Forget it.
Choice is always.
I'm
have
not,
consequences.
this isn't worth the fight. The city wants to make the city walkable and the roundabout's not gonna fix the pedestrian traffic. And what we continue to do in this city is not take into consideration the walkability of the neighborhoods. And what we do is we keep separating the neighborhoods by traffic because we want to speed the traffic along, and we're not connecting neighborhoods. And the fact of the matter is, and that's a policy decision that as we continue to put these stupid roundabouts in, we're going to continue to make that. Yeah, I'll tell you how I feel about the roundabouts. We're going to continue to have the same issues. We'll have the same issue at 6400 West. We'll have the same issue at 5490, but I will just leave that as a fight that's not willing to fight. We'll just continue with this.
I'm just curious if you have any study. It's kind of interesting because people who drive say roundabouts do slow traffic down. And now you're saying that roundabouts facilitate traffic and make it less walkable. I think they make it more walkable personally, because you only have to cross half the street at a time. There's an island in between.
No, but because you don't cross
And traffic's moving slower.
you don't cross at the roundabout through the middle of the roundabout. Because
You walk over to the edge. It's about
Okay,
60
No,
feet
you don't.
anyway.
Okay, I have a question for Mr. Clegg. We're asking for 2 new street division employees. And I know that we've added streets, and I wondered if you knew how many
We're
lane
at
miles that we've
lane
added.
miles, we've increased, I think 12%. We're at about 899 lane miles right now. The 2 positions we're asking for are actually going to be for the concrete crew. Right now, as you guys have heard in the past, we're 1.5 years behind on concrete. Well, 1.5 years out.
Is concrete available this year?
It's available. It's harder to get, but we can still get it. And I heard it's going to get tougher too. As of yesterday, I heard that.
So even gonna have
Okay, so
material
that-
for the orders?
And material prices going up.
Yep. So with this, right now, we have 6 staff members on our concrete crew. With these 2 additional people on the concrete crew, we can somewhat break up the crew into 2 different crews. One can go do pumping, taking care of sidewalk issues. The other could be working on tear out special projects. Right now we have over 300 work orders, concrete work orders that are in the queue that we just can't get to right now. We're working down. We do 2 or 3 and 10 more come on the list with different things, with different.
And do you
sidewalk
see
issues,
this?
curb issues?
For me, when we're adding employees, I need to know not just that we need them today, but I need to know that we need them in 3 years, in 5 years.
Sure. So also.
Because what we're trying to build is a good group of employees, right?
Exactly.
Not seasonal.
Yeah,
one-time.
so these additional staff members, remember that they also help with the overlays, they jump from crew to crew when needed, snow removal.
Do plowing.
Yeah, it's not just on concrete. That's their main job in the summer months, is just focusing on concrete and the liability issues. But they transfer from crew to crew when needed when special projects come up, when, you know, also the concrete crew and the street department, we do all the water repair restoration, Leland Drive, they did all of that restoration work. So they're multifaceted where they're going to be working. The main focus is concrete, trying to get rid of some of the liability and trying to get some of those work orders taken care of.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions for Mr. Glick?
Can I talk real quick on the 7800 South widening?
Oh, please poke the bear.
I just want to give you an update. Environmental's done. It's yeah, the environmental study's done. It will hopefully be going out to design this upcoming new budget budget year 23. It should go out to design. So
And what's the
Which means-
status of working with UDOT and Mountain View with that?
I have a quarterly meeting with managers and UDOT directors. The last meeting I attended, I asked that question and they said they're working on it with their Mountain View corridor team.
Is there anything that we can do to
That was
help
my
with
question.
that?
I need to follow back up with them because I wasn't able to attend the last meeting. I need to follow back up with the Region 2 director and see where they're at.
And can you let us know what that status
will.
of that is? Because
Yep.
it's, yeah,
That-
Maybe
for the
maybe in
two of us
mayor's
that live
report next
past
week.
that, it's a nightmare.
Yep, I
So-
agree.
So
No, you're
ballpark,
fine.
when do you see a backhoe out there?
Probably it would be a year to design, easily a year to design, and then, so probably 24.
So 2 summers from now.
Wow.
Possibly, yeah.
Just to start.
You're gonna make me a real popular guy.
It's, yeah, wow. And there's nothing we can do in the meantime to alleviate because it's I mean,
Yeah.
obviously it's bad.
Yeah, I
Wasn't
get
you,
it.
it was Dave, the other David.
Murphy.
So Murphy came up to me, oh, gosh, I've been on the council for about 6 months. Hey, we got funding for 78th. We got it done. I said, great. When's it going to be starting? Probably about 5 years from now. Great. That was last year. So
It took 2 years to get paint striping up at the dog park. No offense. I was saying.
Anyway, that's the latest on.
So streets is up currently. Does anyone have questions on this slide? Nope. Okay. Any other questions?
Can we talk about capital projects like he did or no?
You can talk about whatever you want to talk about, but know that we didn't prepare for everything that you're going to ask probably. So if we're prepared to answer it, we'll answer it. If we're not, we'll tell you, you got to wait.
Okay, then I'll talk about it. Page 196, under the, yeah, I got my numbers here. We've got the city hall remodel. As you go along, you can kind of see how it's broken out. I have a concern when we have on line 32, we have one lump sum being distributed. Do we plan on building a building for $7.6 million in a year? Because then when you go down to page 196, for the 5-year plan, we have a negative 66666, which I'm not so sure that's a great number to have.
That's okay. So let me explain how this is working. The TRCC grant from the county is in 3-year distributions and it's $2 million. So 6666667 per year. Okay. It is one for next budget year, then 25 and then 26. However, for me to sign a contract for construction, if you'll remember a couple meetings ago, we are required to have the full amount budgeted in order for me to be able to have, not me, I don't sign the contracts, for the construction contract on a building to be signed. So the construction contract would have to be under $7.6 million in order for us to sign the contract. And proceed with construction, but we would not be able to collect that full 2 million until likely after construction was almost complete or complete.
Well, I know where council members Worthen's going with this,
Go ahead.
and until we come up with an alternative, with what we're planning on in that building out there, because that building's gonna cost us $12 million. With the cost and with the cost overruns and inflation, that building's going from 9 to 12. I'm not gonna vote to support $7.5 million in a capital improvement fund to execute that for an art center. I want to look at alternatives to come up with some sort of community event center, have some alternative building. But until we have that, I want to scratch out that $7.6 million from the project list. And because we can always add it back in with the budget amendment, but I'm not going to support the budget at all if it includes the full 7.6 in this.
Tim, my point was, I'd want to scratch it out until we know we have enough money to build it. I don't want to start building something and then go, oops, half finished building. Oh, where do we get the money from now? So until we know we have the money, I don't want it in there, right? That doesn't make any sense.
You got any thoughts, Councilman Jacob? On that?
This wasn't my question, but sure,
I know,
I've got
but-
lots of thoughts.
But at this point, we kind of need to give some direction,
This
right?
is-
Because do we want to keep it in when it becomes it's our budget right now? Do we want to put it there? Do we want to put it in some reserve? I actually thought it was going to be in a reserve area, not in the actual budget.
So
but-
what I've been saying since this little community theater type building was proposed, and they're arguing over, well, is it 240 seats or 270 seats or 230 seats or 220 seats, but there's a sloped floor, or 260 seats, but the floor's flat. And fun stuff like that. Building costs are only going up. If we're ever going to build it, put it in the budget and start it. If we are not ever going to build it, I can think of a whole lot of places where we can spend $7.5 million.
Would you consider
Oh,
an
well, there you go.
alternative structure though?
That you could build.
That you can.
What
build?
I would love to do is go to the next school that's going to be proposed or going to be built or going to be remodeled and say, hey, school district, if we gave you $7 million, what do you think you could do with that might help us out with our arts community? Or whatever. I mean, gosh, let's think outside the box just a little bit. I mean, I've been saying that for, I don't know,
Oh,
3 or
that's-
4
Which what
years on
Kelvin
this.
is doing, if we discuss the alternatives in a separate meeting or whatnot and listen to that and then go from there with that, I think that's an ideal situation because Kelvin's got some good ideas
I
that I
think
listened to.
Isaac's actually working on some alternatives too. So
Yeah.
So maybe what we should do is ask Denise to take this out of this line and put it where, Denise? Yes.
That's what I would
the end
ask
of-
for,
the
until
end
we
of the
know what we
day
want to do.
Is if we're going to build it, we have to start building
We
it.
need
It's
to
not
do
going to get cheaper. It may be $12 million now and not 7.6.
You know,
But if we wait 6 months, it's going to be 14 million the way things are going.
So
And
where's
if
the
we
rest
wait
of the
a
money
year,
coming
it's going to
from?
be 15 million.
and Melissa's right. Where's the
where's
rest of the money
coming from? I don't want to start something and then we don't have the money to finish it.
And you think about it, if it goes to $12 million at a 250 seat theater, that's just got that theater, we're paying someplace in the neighborhood of $48,000 a chair. And that's irresponsible.
And if we sell tickets for $12 each, let me do the math.
What I'm hearing
Will
the
be
stack
dead.
from 4 or
4,000
more sitting here is that they
Place it
want to
back
see
into a
that
reserve.
put in reserves for a community building. And it sounds like this council, because that other design was the prior council. It sounds like this council needs to have a, one of those work meetings and talk about it. Because
Let me ask you about the county funding. What would we
Well,
like to do?
we know that might go away, but right now the county funding with what we have is not enough to build that building.
That's
And
correct.
that's the concern.
We have 5.6 that is our money that will go back into reserves. And then I will remove the county funding until we budget it because I can't put revenue in that we haven't got yet, right?
And I'm not suggesting that we're not going to start this in this next fiscal year,
Just
but
so
I
you
don't-
want more discussion.
but we need more discussion on some potential alternatives
That are
and
more affordable.
that make it,
Can work in our budget.
that can work in the budget, though, then we can move ahead to do that. I don't want to delay this much, but I also don't want to say, oh, we're gonna let's budget $7 million. And then all of a sudden we have to come up with another $5 or $6 million. And we just magically say, well, we're going to have to take that out of reserve or, or raise property taxes for it or whatever the case may be. And if we're headed into a recession, that's just not a good place to be to go into a void of saying, oh, we need another $5 or $6 or $7 million. And we don't know where it's going to come from to finish this little building that, that's just an irresponsible decision to me, but.
The council,
Can I ask a question
three.
first?
Yep.
So we've got a lot of work to do on the budget, and most of our council meeting night, all of those until we've decided what we're doing through June, will be on the budget. Is there an appetite? Because I also feel like this is something we really need to get done. Is there an appetite to attend a committee of the whole meeting on perhaps a different night for this specific discussion?
Yes,
That's fine.
it's part of our job.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's fine.
Okay.
But for now, we're
Um,
gonna pull this, right?
I don't really know who to ask about this, whether it's Mr. Lee, Mr. Astle, Deputy Roberts, I don't know, but one of you. Basically, are there any clarifying questions from what you've heard? Who needs to hear and answer that? Mayor?
I was just going to speak for just a brief moment about the arts building.
Okay.
I was following the direction of the council to go ahead and proceed forward with that. I have talked with the county council and the county mayor's office about getting the balance of grants from them to cover the the amount of inflation that cost has gone up. I'm not guaranteed that amount, but we have a good chance of getting that amount. So I was going to hold off until we got that. And then when we get that amount, then we could move forward. Meanwhile, we've been checking other avenues and other options in case we don't get that, to see what we can do to make it work. So that one way or another, we'll do it with the money that we have, or we'll get the additional money to make it happen that way. That might help you in your next conversation when you have your next meeting about it.
Do you know when Mayor, do you have an idea of when they'll get back to you on if they might have extra funding to contribute?
The application's open for that right now. I don't know when when we hear.
Yeah, the
back from them.
TRCC deadline is in July.
Okay.
And we won't know about awarding probably
Till
till late
after that.
July or August.
But their budget year is January to January, right?
Right.
So if they allocate it out of the budget, they're not going to do anything until January.
Well, they will, because they committed that they know how much they have to put out in TRCC funds. They have to wait for that committee to meet and designate that, then the county has to approve it.
Let's just
The
wait.
county council does.
Okay. So it sounds like it might be prudent. We would like it to put that back in reserves in this budget book, but then wait and maybe be prepared for a meeting probably in July, it sounds like. Does that work for the council?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Great.
This budget's not going to be approved before August anyway. I mean, they're proposing a 10% property tax increase. If we can cut 10% out of this budget so we don't have to do any truth in taxation, I'll be shocked. So I think we're going to August anyway. So
I would agree with you. I don't see how you can take out. I guess the question, Mr. Anderson, you wanted to say 3 fingers.
No, I was just trying to get clarification. I had 3 to kind of wait on the arts.
You have
building,
4.
but now, yes. So we're good.
You have 4, maybe 5. Okay. Up in front of me is capital projects. Does anyone have questions on any of the other capital projects on here we've discussed? A roundabout, but there it is. Pedestrian bridge over the river.
To be honest, all of these projects were on the UDOT STIP plan. outside of the transportation master plan and the traffic signal installation. Those were two projects that staff brought to us for the roads. Otherwise, this is completely driven by projects that have some sort of other funding source.
I'm missing the light on 90th South and never mind.
And the median and the paint that we need.
So as I was looking through this, we approved the alternate transportation master plan a couple of years ago. And it had projects in it, some of them very small. And I don't see any of those projects being done in this. Did I miss something?
You didn't. What's going on right now is that we have a major restructuring, which you've been aware of moving resources and responsibilities around. So we're moving engineering to be transportation focused. We're creating a public utility. So they've got engineers over there and inspectors. This is really a year where we're needing to get our foundations put together. And so we've kind of minimized that project workload while we are establishing responsibilities and changing those responsibilities over. I'm not saying that it'll be a slow year. Those are some big projects that are going on, but we're kind of needing to say that we've got to get ourselves organized before we start straight ahead. We can bring you some more projects at budget amendment, but this will be the majority of projects that the staff believes they can manage and manage well at the time.
See, I'm just gonna tell you one of my philosophies. When I took over when I joined the council, our reserve fund was $11 million. With this budget, the reserve is $23 million. The reserve fund needed to grow, but the taxpayers aren't seeing anything for the money that they're paying. We put an extra $12 million in reserve. You know, let's give, and some of these have been good budget years. Let's give the taxpayers something that shows something that we're doing something beneficial with their money. And so that's where my philosophy is coming from is, and some of those projects, Mayor and I had this discussion. Some of those projects are $10,000 projects. Some of those projects are $20,000 projects. If we're not making progress in this city to increase some of these projects, we're never going to, then the exercise, then what I'm going to suggest is the alternative transportation master plan. Let's just throw it in the garbage, delete it off the website, not use it. It's the same with any other plan. If we have a plan and we don't use it, it's a wish, it's a dream. We're not driving anything. And so I think we have a choice. We either start looking at some of these projects or we throw it out and say we don't need it and just continue on with the same old way that we can, to the same old way we do business.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are building a park, an escape park, right? And
Yes, there are several parks that will be coming online by the end of July. And I may be jumping ahead here, but Corbin has asked Brian and I that we're working with Alan to set up a time after hours that we can offer a few times to take you guys around and show you some of these projects, because in the big scheme of things, we're talking to you about the $4 or $5 million, $10 million projects. There are a myriad of projects around the city that we finished.
what's that one
we had a
with the mayor had the open house, the detention pond with what's that park called?
Trimble Creek.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so Trimble Creek was just, I mean, it took us a year and a half to get that done. Mostly was the figuring out where we were going to get the funds to do it. But that was completed in the last 30 days. Maple Hills Park, I'm hoping we can get you guys out there in the next few weeks on a night other than this night, a few at a time or all of you at the same time to show you that. We want to show you the new Bingham detention area, which is going to be another 8-acre open park for soccer fields and any other open field activities. We've got several small projects that we've completed. Plum Creek, we're in the middle of improving Plum Creek right now, which has been a eyesore and a nose sore for years with the stench that comes off of that area that comes up and down. That's in the middle of progress right now. It'll be done before July 1st because all of our funds have to be used this year for that. That's probably on me that I have not had the time to advertise some of that to you. So I apologize, but our goal is to be able to get you guys out at least a few times a year going forward and say, look, here's where we're at with these projects. There's others that are in process right now that we're using money this year, but you won't see the impact until this next fall. For example, 4800 West, the trees between New Bingham and 90th South. That area is probably one of the ugliest eyesores next to 70th, the entry on 70th South into the city. Dead trees, no irrigation.
90th, nothing to brag about.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's several areas that don't show well for the city, but we are making small steps. The administration was great and gave me a small budget this year to make some of those improvements, and that's on me that I haven't advertised that, so I apologize. Okay. But we will get you out there to see those.
So I guess, Kelvin, when you're saying that, are you saying road specific or?
I'm specifically talking about some of the small trail projects that we connect, neighborhoods, and we had a list of 25 or 30. And I was actually sitting in a meeting one night and I heard a city employee say, well, it really doesn't matter what the council's priorities were on that. We just do it the way it gets funded anyway. And we don't care. That was the attitude. And if the city council went through that active transportation master plan and we prioritize some things, if we wasted our time on those priorities on active transportation, then let's just admit we wasted our time, throw the active transportation master plan out, let the mayor ride his bike on Redwood Road and dodge the traffic, and we not worry about it.
He has a vest.
He has a vest.
Well, I can tell you the trail in Teton got completed, so it can connect into the other side. That was not, well, I don't know how long ago that was. It wasn't very long ago though.
Well, then
few months ago. So
maybe it is a communication piece. Are you aware, Isaac, that once a week Shanna sends out a thing of what's going on? You sometimes put things on there, right? So maybe just even add them to that, you know, like this was completed. And, you know, I think everyone here drives. We could even drive ourselves out to take a peek.
That's a good idea. Just more awareness.
But give me a good address. Don't just say, oh, out there.
Council Chair, if I may, can I chime in on this issue as well? Councilman Green, your point's a good one. Part of the reason 2 of the 8 and a half positions that are asked for as staff increases, 2 of those are direct response to your comment too. The parks project manager and the engineer being asked for will focus on, among other things, improving the efficiency of which we're getting capital projects done, large and small ones, including the active transportation plan and parks plan projects.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Does anyone else have something to ask or share? If not, I'm going to find a page in this book.
I'll throw my idea out.
Great.
And I'm not so concerned with all these one-time projects and things, and I don't have any bones to pick with anybody. But this compensation study, so I'm looking at this. My job in the private sector, I guarantee I will not get an inflation adjusted wage, let alone a COLA and a career ladder and a market compensation study and everything else. We're looking at, I don't know, it was on a slide here a minute ago, but people are looking at a double-digit plus percentage raise this year for the most part, right? An average of 9.7%, or a total of 9.7%, or something like that. That's a huge raise. And granted, we need to take care of our people, and I totally agree with that. And I like the idea of market study because that might get me a raise this year. So our company's doing that. I'm excited. Merit increases should be paid. COLAs should be paid. I am in favor of tax increases to keep up with inflation. I've said that before. That's why I proposed the one last year that we passed at 2%, 2.5%, whatever it was. It was small. It was not enough to keep up with inflation. And this one probably won't be either. But what I would like to see, and we don't know what the percentage tax increase is going to be proposed at the end of the day is because we don't have our revenue number, but we're guessing 10-ish%. If this number, the number that was on here is right at that the compensation study wage, yeah, here it is. Yeah, the 1,006,620. Oh wait, I looked at the wrong one. 1.187114. Dang, I gotta do the math again because I looked at the wrong number. If that is the market study, which is larger than we anticipate it being, I was talking to Corbin about this last week. We anticipate doing a market study every year going forward. Is that right? And if that's right, we don't anticipate it being quite this large every year. What is a ballpark percentage wise that you think it might be in a quote unquote normal year going forward?
So I did the same kind of exercise in another city several years in a row. And the first year it was big. And then after that, it was less than about $250,000 or less.
Okay, so 25% of what we're looking at here. What I would propose doing is taking this year's number plus the anticipated, let's just say $250,000, next year's number, divide it by 2 and phase it in over 2 years so that our property tax increase this year is, instead of being 10%, it'll be closer to 8%. Because I mean, so if I was going off the other $1 million number, that's 5.47% of property tax. If property tax is 183,000-ish per percentage point, right? $1 million is a little more than 5 of those. So 1.1 million is close to 6. So we could cut off 3% if we phased it in over 2 years. So instead of a 10% increase, we'd be looking at a 7% increase. I want to take care of our people. I think it's important. And like Isaac said, he loves his job. I don't think Isaac's looking for another job if he's going to get a 7% raise this year and a 6% raise next year instead of a 13% raise all this year, right? Or whatever it might be. Just throwing numbers out there. So that's my idea. My idea is let's phase in the market adjustment over 2 years instead of 1 year. And that way, because our primary responsibility is, I love our employees, but our primary responsibility is our employees don't elect us. We're not their representative. We're the people's representative to the employees. And so our first responsibility is to the taxpayer. If we can phase that in over 2 years, it's just a little bit of help that a little bit of edge we can take off the tax rate.
So Ms. Steck, I have a question. In July, we said yes to a significant pay increase for people that wear that badge. And that was unanimous of the council. And at that time, you said, now know that if you do this, it will cost X amount, which will be about this percentage of a property tax increase. What is that amount to cover what we've already committed to? If that is all that we did, if we didn't add any new employees, what is that property tax increase?
At the time on August 11th, 2021, we had a work session and discussed this. And I specifically said that we would need a 10% property tax increase to cover that increase at that point in time. Does not include any compensation study, COLA, merit. We didn't have any of those in the mix at the time. In August of 2021, none of this was foreseeable. But I did let the council know that if they made that change, it would require a 10% property tax increase this year. And then we could hopefully get back into smaller tax increases going forward. But that moved the budget substantially at that point in time. And there was no revenue identified. Yes, we got additional sales tax, but that is covering additional inflationary increases and COLAs and merits and whatever else for the rest of the city as well. That one move is the difference between what we did then and identifying a source now to make up that gap. This slide I prepared earlier today, the change between 2021 and 2023, that's a very short period of time. That's one full budget year. That budget for the police alone has moved 32% or $5.7 million. And we have no revenue stream specifically identified for that. I'm not saying it was the wrong move. We've done a lot of the right things because at that point in time, we had 18 or 19 open police positions. We weren't able to recruit. They were going to other cities because we weren't compensating them appropriately at the time. Well, I shouldn't say appropriately, at the same level as everyone else was. So they were being lured away. That is the risk if we don't adopt a compensation study, that those same employees, there are a lot of public works employees that are currently well under what they could be paid somewhere else. And all they have to do is go across the city border. It's the same thing that happened to police when Taylorsville opened up their police department. We lost quite a few officers. At the time, we were asked specifically, what can we do to get our retention rate up and recruitment rate up? And it was specific to compensation. We've addressed those and we're now almost fully staffed. I think we've had a couple of them leave or retire or something. I know there's a couple openings, but it's very small compared to what has happened before. But we've got to identify how are we going to continue to pay for those kinds of changes and what is the cost to us if we don't retain our employees? The cost is far greater.
Deputy Chief Roberts, do you know when we lost those 20 some odd officers? Do you know how many of those were due to, like Salt Lake offering an enormous amount more?
Yeah, I think the majority of, I've heard that as the biggest reason for sure. And I think we've seen a huge impact from what you gave us. We have officers we've never had before. We're able to fill positions now, which is why we're not asking for new positions, because we can now feel the impact of having a full staff. And we're literally months away from being fully staffed. And that's exciting, a place that we haven't seen for a long time. There's guys that leave because they want to work for somewhere slower. We've heard that, where they don't want to be as busy. We're getting busy. And we want people, we want quality people. We want to be able to keep those quality people. And I feel good about the staff we have right now.
And that's another question I have, because we're just looking at compensating those that we already have. But I don't know, and maybe nobody in the room knows, maybe somebody does, but I know that between the beginning of COVID and now, there are exponentially more cars on our roads, which tells me we had a lot of people moving in during those couple of years. We haven't increased our fire or police for increased people. And that is actually a question that I have in the front of my book for our body is, when do we start planning to fund new public safety? A concern that I have with our budget is, it's like when I was newly married. I made it, I paid all the bills, but if the fridge went out, or if the car went out, or heaven forbid someone got sick, I try to treat it on my own. But if we had to get something else, we didn't have money for it. And I kind of feel like unless somebody can find stuff in this budget, that's kind of how our city is. And we're finally getting a bit of a savings account, but most of that money in the savings account is earmarked for projects in the future. We have water tanks coming, we have roads coming, we have things coming that most of it, I think, is already kind of earmarked for the water. You're right. But so I guess my concern is, we said that we would increase, and I'm going on record saying that I am going to hold true to what I said in August, is when you're saying I said it, because I want to keep our police force and I want to keep our city safe, not just because I want to, but because that's the number one thing I hear from our community. And I love it that when I read Facebook and other social media, that people like our police department. They love our firemen and our police. And, you know, the story that was shared about an officer jamming out to some music with a teenage boy, or explaining to a teenage boy why you don't want him to go too fast on that motorcycle, because you don't want to be the person there coming when you've wrecked that motorcycle. How amazing is that? And that's what I want to keep in our city. And so I guess I would ask of the council, we have on page 13 our council budget priorities. If you have more to share, let's share that. But if we don't, let's look at those and kind of at least brainstorm. When our book was coming out, originally this was filled out, and I and Mr. Anderson felt like it shouldn't be filled out because we hadn't had this discussion. But one of them is enhance community safety. I have my own ideas. One is keep our community looking aesthetically pleasing. It's called the broken window syndrome. If you keep things nice, you have less crime. It's proven. You got data for that to back me up, right? But it's there. Enhance community safety. Well, talking about long-term goals, I think one of our long-term goals that we need to work in this, guys, is that we're going to increase our police force, because if we don't have more people on the street, boots on the streets, we're going to start losing. And we know that we're going to need another fire station. So it's hard, but we've got a lot to do. So
back
yes,
to the point I was making.
yes.
Denise, let's just talk about police really quick, because that's number one. What's the percentage raise if this budget is passed as proposed? How much more will police officer 1, 2, and 3 make next year percentage wise, that they're over what they're making now after we've already done the bump that we did last year?
If you add compensation study, all the things, right?
Yeah,
Market study, blah, blah,
compensation,
blah.
markets, yeah,
Mhm.
merit, whatever.
An average of 11 to 12%.
Okay, 11 to 12%. And then next year, what would we project the increase to be next year?
Would likely be more like a normal step for them. A lot of them
Maybe
are
like a
topped out
4 to 5 or something.
2.5,
Two and
and
a half
then
to 3.
whatever COLA
Okay,
would
so
be.
what I'm proposing, just so that we're clear and we're not muddled by motorcycle stories, is instead of 12 this year and 2.5 next year, what I would personally be thrilled to get 8 this year and 6 next year. Instead of 12 and 2, what about 8 and 6? Then we have to do, then instead of hitting our citizens with a huge old 10% property tax increase this year, we can do 8% this year. And instead of doing 4% next year, we do 5% next year, or whatever it happens to be. I'm just saying, let's minimize the impact. We have a lot of citizens. We hear this all the time.
And I'm great with that. But Denise, at first we were told 10% just to do what we had done. But now I'm guessing with other things that have come in, it must be a little bit less, because otherwise, how could we propose 10% for everything?
Right, we were at 10% then, and that's really the gap that we remain consistent with. So the sales tax increase of 5% over last year, that year over year, is taking care of the rest of it. It's just that one leap that we cannot get over.
Okay, so we need 10% basically moving forward, correct? Okay. Hear me out, and you can correct me, numbers, whatever. Page 171. The series 2015 sales tax revenue bond. Am I correct when I look at this saying it'll be paid off in 2025?
Yes,
That's about $700,000,
correct,
which is about 5% of what we're looking at, a little less.
correct.
Okay, so my thought would be to, over the next 2 years until this is paid off, we take the money from reserves that, from people have been paying into the sales tax revenues, put that back to reduce this tax increase. If we're going to, and with this, so within what, 2 years, we'll be caught to where we need to be, and we'll just be doing a, 4% tax increase?
So Councilmember Worthen's idea is We have 3 more debt service payments on that sales tax revenue bond, and then that requirement will go away. This is a private placement bond, we do have the option of paying off early or making the payment out of our reserves. So in essence, we would still fund it to be paid, but you would, in essence, have reserves paying that debt service for the next 3 years, and then the requirement would go away. In essence, you're using reserves for sort of one-time funding.
That reduces the tax increase.
That would bring the tax increase down to about
uses some of
5%.
the money from the citizens.
The more I've been sitting on it and the more I've been thinking about it, that might be it's a good use of it, in my opinion.
It's the citizens' money to reduce the tax increase. It keeps the COLAs, it keeps the compensation, it keeps the employees, everything can stay. And we still reduce that tax burden on. I mean, I'd really like to get it down to 3%, but I can't see that. But I mean, this is still, it gets it down to what, about 4.5-ish?
I would say 4.5 to 5, depending on what our new growth would be.
So what would the consequence of that be? What would the long-term consequence be? Because I think
Good
on
question.
the surface, that sounds perfect to me.
Right. It is. It's less in reserves, which typically those reserves are what we're going to transfer over to the CIP fund or one-time revenues during the year, right? So right now, our reserve is very healthy. This would bring it down about $2.2 million or so, which it's still healthy, right? We're at about 32 or 33%. It would still be healthy. The long-term consequences, this budget, similar to your discussion about police officers and firefighters going forward, there is no intentional transfer to the CIP at all out in this budget or in their 5-year forecast, because we're just barely making do, right? With these little small tax increases, we're not really thinking about what is the capital projects fund going to need, or what do we need in our future for maintenance or improvements in our city. Now, if sales tax revenue comes in addition to our 5%, that's one-time revenue. We bring that straight over to the CIP fund and we're in a better situation. But it's kind of like trying to count on a bonus to fund your CIP, right?
Yeah, but didn't Mr. Astle say that one of you said we weren't going to do too many projects right now because
We're
of
not
the
right now.
changing of the foundation?
Right.
So it's probably a good
The
time.
requirement isn't right now. You're right. Absolutely. So when you're asking long-term consequence, the long-term is we're kind of getting rid of the 700,000. We're not moving the needle forward so that we have an intentional transfer to the CIP, but it is a strong solution that would be using some of the one-time monies that we've received over the last 2 years. I mean, in your personal life, right? When you kind of get to the place where you're worried about money, you're like, I need to pay down my debt because it's going to have a burden on me. We could pay this debt off and relieve some of that tax burden of about $700,000 a year.
I don't really see a downside.
I do.
Okay, what is it?
The exact thing that you were just talking about. If we need to increase officers on the street, $600,000 funds 6 officers, 5 to 6 officers. The downside is we pay off the debt. We figure out, now we sucked up $600,000 this year. And how do we pay for more officers and more firefighters on the street? Because we don't have and Costco's not coming, and it's not going to get built in the next 3 years. And Trader Joe's isn't coming. And
Downtown's not gonna hear yet.
Texas Roadhouse.
Texas Roadhouse
All
isn't
the ones
here. We can.
Our dealership.
Truck ranch. Okay, my original idea, which you can all just get all mad about, was to take it out of the arts building. But I knew that wasn't gonna fly, so I looked at something else.
If we do and take down this debt, what would we have? What's our numbers in the reserve?
It's still gonna be healthy, right?
It's $23 million right now, so it would go down to 21 million.
So we still have the funds if we need to do that.
And really, it is the citizens' money we're going to use to bring this down, because it came from sales tax revenue. So you said, let's give it back to them. Let's show them some of their money. So this is doing that.
I don't have a problem with that. But what that is solving a short-term problem of the tax increase.
Yeah, but we're also saying crystal ball. I mean,
Okay.
we are working on
So,
economic development.
okay.
Aren't we getting truck ranch still, or is that's still a thing? Yeah, okay.
But let's just take all things being equal with the budget. It's 60, whatever it is, $64 million, whatever the heck it is. And we need to add we need to add 4 firefighters and 5 police officers, or we need to add half dozen community service officers to free up the police so that they're not doing that the community service. And by the way, the community service officer, we can probably get 2 community service officers for the price of one almost, not quite, but at some point in time, and as Kayleen mentioned, we have got to increase the staff of the police department and the fire department. We can't continue to grow and expect the police and fire to handle that same population growth with the same number of officers. And then when you include the fact that South Jordan's growing and that traffic runs through West Jordan, and Harriman's growing and that traffic runs through West Jordan a lot of times, we need to grow the police department. $600,000 in a year or two buys us 3 or 4 police officers.
But you're saying we're not going to grow economically, which we already know we are. We already have things in the works with businesses that are coming. So, I mean, you would have to say that 600,000 won't be there because we stay stagnant on the other side.
And if we head to a recession, we're going to be stagnant on the other side.
But you made the point. This is the citizens' money. Let's give it back to them. You've said that to me several times.
Too. If we need to, we can do a little bit now and a little bit next year and still keep that percentage down and have enough funds if we.
And we're only going down. $1.5 million over 2 years.
Denise, we're just talking the sales tax revenue bond, right?
Yeah.
So when I'm also looking at the general obligation bonds, which in 2025 should go away, right?
Yes, but those are paid directly by sales tax. So that was a voter approved. So the sales tax is already paying directly for that.
Okay.
Not sales tax, I'm sorry, property tax.
Property tax are paying
Right.
those.
And then when in 2025, your sales tax, your property tax
Property
rate
tax just
will
goes
actually drop because that obligation will be gone.
Okay.
Which
Unless
actually
you
wouldn't make it so.
obligate something
Yeah,
else.
what I was going to say,
Unless you raise it again.
It won't make it so hard to raise it at that point.
Right.
And this all happens at the same time. So, I mean, to make it easier on people over the next couple of years, like you just said, we hit a recession, it's going to make it harder on people. So let's make it easier by giving them some of their money back that they've spent over the last couple of years.
I think it's a safe bet.
Council Chair, may I speak to this issue?
Yes.
Sorry. Don't poop on my parade.
I just want to say you're both right. You're taking money out of reserves to pay off debt to free up ongoing money that's paying those debt payments. That makes it from a 10% property tax increase to a 5% property tax increase. But what that doesn't do is free up that future savings 3 years from now. So to Calvin's point, it likely takes your 10% property tax increase and makes it 5 now and maybe a 5% increase 2 or 3 years from now, because then you don't get the savings of that windfall, losing that debt service 2 or 3 years when that debt comes off. So Calvin, you're concerned about, hey, this is kind of kicking the can down the road. It is a little bit, it's splitting the big increase up into 2 smaller increases over time.
And that's really what my goal was.
It's not negating probably the need for a future increase.
Council, if I can just interject one little thing. I think it's fair for you, in conversations I've had with Denise, on this suggestion, you're taking 1.8 million that would be property tax and basically replacing it with sales tax, right? So you're taking 1.8.
No.
Yep. That's exactly what you're doing. This is a
You're
sales tax bond that
eliminating-
comes out of sales tax.
Oh, over
bond.
you're talking over two years.
No, you're replacing the 1.8 million that's proposed as a property tax with property tax dollars and replacing that with 1.8 in sales tax dollars. When you talk about a resort of the economy, sales tax is the volatile money. And good tax policy is, okay, they talk about a three-legged stool. So you're balanced between sales tax, property tax, and all other taxes. And we're not balanced on a three-legged stool. So I just want, I'm not saying anything about the proposal other than you're replacing the 1.8 million that is proposed with property tax and replacing it with sales tax dollars with this idea.
And
That's
we
all I'm saying.
already rely on sales
Well, it's not the
tax
whole
for
thing though, right?
40.
No, we're only doing 700,000. So it's not 1.8. So we're still gonna do a property tax increase, just not 10%. We're just gonna bring it down by using. Get the gist?
Yeah, if we're still talking about the same thing that
Yes.
we were when I walked out. A dollar is a dollar is a dollar. We have a dollar in the budget. We have a dollar in the budget, and whether it's coming from that fund or this fund or the other fund. We're not magically inventing dollars here by paying off this debt with reserve money, because it does cost money out of reserve money that will not be there in the future for something else. A dollar is a dollar is a dollar. No matter Peter, Paul, and Mary, when they're taking money from each other and singing Puff the Magic Dragon or whatever, you're not inventing money. We're not saving money. We're just moving money around. In this case, I think it's actually not a bad idea. I'm actually impressed.
So do we want to ask Ms. Steck to bring back basically a
So in essence-
screenshot to give us for our next meeting when all of us are there so that we can get a
So in
straw
essence,
poll?
what would happen if I have the majority of the support on this idea is I would reduce property tax revenue by $713,000. And we would show that we are going to adopt a general fund balance that's a little out of balance. We'll be using reserves to balance the budget. So we would be reducing the property tax revenue by $713,000. That would be the change that I would make. And it would show as $713,000 coming out of reserves.
But then you would be banking on that the economy is going to be okay and sales tax are going to stay where they have been or better in the
Exactly.
future, right?
Yes.
Because if perchance the economy tanks and people aren't spending money, then
Then
that
we would
revenue
have to-
stream is going to significantly decrease.
Then we would be pulling further from reserves. We'd come to you with a budget amendment.
Would you just do the 700,000 or would we just retire the whole bond?
Yeah, that's.
I can do that. It's a private placement bond. We could retire the whole bond and show that we want to retire the whole bond. I could budget the 2.1 million or 2.
Would we save money if we retired it? Would we save
If
the
we
interest?
retire, we will save the fees that you see in that column as well as a portion of the interest.
As I say, because if it's
It's
fairly
pretty
simple
small,
interest, we
but
wouldn't-
yes, it is
we
easy
shouldn't-
to me to do.
So could you bring that information for next meeting?
Yes, but you're adopting a tentative next week. So do you want me to bring it to you as a tentative budget to adopt with a reduced property tax revenue and with the full bond being paid off?
I guess what you need from us is that, but you also need from us, are we okay with the staff that has been asked for?
Correct.
Are 4 of us okay with the increased staff? Is really what I need to find out for them so that they can have it in the book or not in the book. Do you want to go through them individually or?
I want to do this question first and then go back to the staff question. 'Cause
Well,
two separate questions,
they're
right?
related, but I'm fine with the staffing. I would still prefer to phase in the market-based compensation over 2 years. That increase. And knock this down even further. I mean, Melissa's idea is great. We
Before
can
we
knock
move
it
forward,
down
can we just do one
4%.
idea at a time?
But
What I'm saying here, if we're proposing
Trying.
changes, I'm just saying, that would knock it down a little bit more. So.
But if you adopted Melissa's proposal, it allows that 600,000 or 700,000 to be dealt with, and you just deal with the one-time the one-time bigger hit with the compensation plan. And and as Corbin said, it may cause, it reduces, it may cause a slightly bigger property tax increase in a couple of years. But at the end of the day, I think it accomplishes the same thing that you want to accomplish, Zach.
Well, it does. It takes it from a 10% increase to a 6% increase. It's about 4%.
So we're
700,000.
already going to 4
But
point
if-
something-ish percent.
But I still think the right idea is to phase in the compensation plan
I
over 2
would- I
years and
wouldn't
save
support
another.
it.
Alan, can you put back up the
I would
compensation
support
screen,
phased in.
please?
Because if we drop the police out, so I'm gonna pick on Deputy Chief Robertson right here. I'm gonna pick on him. If his officers if it's 11% to keep them at market and we only fund them 6% is 6% is a good jump for an officer to say, I'll go to Taylorsville for an extra 6%.
And
It's also
that's for
the
anyone.
same thing for Brian's
Yeah.
people, that we lose how many because they don't get that 5 or 6% because South Jordan or Midvale or Harriman or somebody will pay that and we won't, and they're willing to take that.
See, and I don't think it's that big of a deal because in 2 years you end up in the same place.
Let
But
me
it
clarify.
is, it will be for our employees. It will be a big deal. If they're looking at this and we've already received 2 emails saying, thank you for considering this compensation package. And then we don't do it. They're going to say, well, Harriman said they'll give me, and $3. And the difference, Zach, is if I get $3 this year or $6 this year, that's $6 times the whole year
Yeah,
that
but if
I've
you get
made.
$3 this year.
It's more.
Let me clarify too another thing.
I've made my point. You
With the
don't have to agree with
compensation
me.
study, we are not
agree with you.
top of the market. We are average. We're hitting the average. So I think that what we've proposed to you is probably really fair and reasonable with the market and with other agencies.
And there's a lot of reasons why people choose to work here. It's not all money based.
I think it's mostly you.
Everybody knows I think it is.
I
really.
think
It's-
so.
It's the
Yeah.
shiny head.
It's him.
Me
Yeah.
and Corbin.
It attracts them.
Oh, yeah.
And Kelvin.
And
I wanna leave Kelvin out.
Isaac
And Isaac, yeah.
and almost
yeah.
Chief
No,
Roberts.
You know what I mean? It's a shiny head, guys.
Okay,
No,
can we go back to the bond?
No, wait, now hang on.
no,
We
I'm-
can go
I'm-
back to your bond in
I'm
a
done.
second.
It's
Does anyone want to
fine.
consider Zach's on the compensation study?
had to bring it up.
I'm not touching the employees.
Okay,
I'm just
okay, that's a dead subject.
as a fundamental
Okay.
principle,
Council Chair,
I like to phase things in.
this is the mayor.
Yeah,
I want to just say that we have fantastic department heads, but I know for a fact there are other cities that contact them on a regular basis, try to get them to move away from our city, and they do offer more money.
I know. I wish people would call me and offer me more money.
They don't? I get it. They offer to pay me houses to move there.
Oh, I'm wrong. I did get a 50-cent increase at the hotel. Sorry. I think the next thing that we need to answer, and then we will go to yours, Melissa, is because yours is tied to the overall cost, right? So we need to find out if we are in favor of increasing personnel with what the mayor's budget asks for. So
Well, that doesn't have to be tied to that though, right?
yeah, it kind of does. It's money and it takes money to.
No, but you can do one without the other, right? Denise? You cannot. You don't have to approve.
Okay, but we're doing this first because I get to be chair tonight. So first we're going with this one and then we'll come back.
I am in favor of the personnel increases.
Okay, thank you.
I'm fine with that. That's
Okay.
absolutely.
Say what you want.
Can we get 2 of them this year and 2 of them next year? Never mind.
What do you have to share?
I would actually like to see.
Would you turn your mic on, please?
Oh, isn't it on? I thought it was on. Sorry. I think we need to start the forward plan. And honestly, I think we need to add something to the police officer staff.
They didn't ask for it. They didn't ask for it.
I'll bet they did ask. They just knew the reality of the
Well,
budget.
I don't know that Kelvin's saying officers. What do you keep calling those other people?
Community service officers.
That.
If we don't start taking a positive step and adding officers and firefighters, when we do have to add officers and firefighters, then all of a sudden
20% property tax increase.
Yeah, can you imagine what would happen if all of a sudden we need to let's just fast forward 5 years and we say, oh, you know what? We need 20 police officers right now. We need 4 million because of inflation. We need $3 or $4 million plus to fund that many more police officers. And we're going to need to raise property taxes another 10 or 15% just to add. If we can do this incrementally, I think that the budget pain is going to be less. I really do. And whether we've got to take a step. So am I okay with the 8.5 employee? What was that the number? If I remember right.
8.5?
8.5.
The half is the passport community.
Passport.
Oh.
Am I good? Am I good with the 8.5? The answer is yes. Would I rather see that 9.5 or 10? Yes, because I want to give the police that an extra person or person and a half or whatever, so that we can start down this path of planning appropriately for the growth in the city. Because we always say, we keep kicking the can, we kick the can down the road. Let's suck it up. Let's start the process and let's do what we need to do and start doing it right.
So I agree. Would you like to speak to the community, please?
Sure, I can't really our goal this year is to get staffed and stay staffed as an agency. We've had positions allocated for a long time and we wanted to fill those. We have plans to be more efficient, and part of that's adding community service officers because, like you pointed out, they're less expensive, but they open up a lot of time for the staff that we do have, and that makes them more efficient. So they're going to be taking our police reports. They're going to be doing traffic control that officers are doing now. So that's the direction.
And currently we have how many of those?
4.
4?
Yes,
okay.
Correct.
So, okay.
We're down 1. So we have 3. We have another one that'll be starting soon. So again, trying to get fully staffed.
Okay. So
our goal.
what does that cost? What does that person cost? Anyone know?
I think
Anyway.
it's around 50,000.
Okay.
Chair Whitelock. Not only did they ask for community officers, we had others from the city who were asking for other employees. But what is so good about our department heads is they looked at the needs of the other departments and they were willingly giving up some of their employees so other departments could have employees. So
they are awesome. And the awesome part of the budget now is now we get to decide.
You do, but I just want to let you know that what the police went through, all of our departments did something similar to that, and all of them care about the city enough to do that. And thank you for listening to that and getting that from them.
Great.
Some of the other things though too is just that we have gone to a new reporting system. We don't have online reporting right now. If we're looking at technology things, there's some things we can do with our cell phones that will speed up reporting, including some dictation, some evidence that they can do with their phone that goes right into the reports, and getting online reporting. Those things will improve efficiency, and those wouldn't be personnel costs as well. So,
are some of those in here? Are some of these in the budget?
Yeah, some of those are.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. Okay.
Our vacant community service officer was budgeted at $79,175.
Is that total or just?
That's total with benefits.
Okay.
So that adds.
So I actually feel that Kelvin's point is well taken, and I agree. Are there two more people that want to add either a half or a whole community service officer? Is that?
Was that what you guys were asking for?
No, they're not. But
Do you need it?
yes, they do, because guess what it does? it helps the officers and it helps
Yeah,
when
I'm
you,
waiting for
when
him to
someone
say it.
calls in. He already said it.
Did you?
Yes.
You need it this year? You got another one coming on, you just said.
Yeah, our goal this year is
No.
to get fully staffed. That's what we wanted to do, is
They're
get
not
the
fully staffed.
They
staff
have-
that we have now.
But you have one that's coming in that's
Correct.
funded.
It's not a new
Correct.
one though. This is a
Not a new
position they've
position, but-
had.
Again, our goal is to try and get the positions that we have, which we've had officer positions, we've had CSO
If
positions
you
that
get
haven't been full.
that one fill that you have, that'll give you 4 that's budgeted already. And you're saying you want a 5th one.
No, I'm saying.
No, we're saying that we see a need in our community because it's growing. And the mayor said, well, yes, they did ask for it, but then after everybody looked together, they said we could do with what we've got.
I do think the staff that we've added this year, just by keeping the positions and filling positions we've never had, we have positions filled right now that we've never had filled. So the police department is bigger than it's ever been now.
Okay.
I think that we can afford to wait a year for those positions,
We can look
which
it
is
up
why
next year.
we said we can look at those and look at improving efficiencies by adding staff. in
Do we
years to
have-
come.
Do we have any idea, Mr. Lee, how many more rooftops we have this year than we had like 2 years ago?
No, you're putting me on the spot. I don't know.
Yep, I am.
off the top of my
Okay.
head.
And that's okay. I just wondered,
At the end of the day.
you know a lot of stuff.
At the end of the day, I don't want to wait a year.
And,
We ought to start.
and neither do I. And the reason I don't is because I hear people say that they've called in to report something and it takes quite a while sometimes for someone to get back to them. And the sooner you can respond to someone that feels like they've been violated, the happier the resolution's going to be. If they have to wait 3 days to get an officer to call back, that incident grows. And I know that because I've done that. And that's exactly how I felt. And that's exactly how people have talked to me and told me about things. So that's kind of what happens. And our problem in our city is just like my budget when I was newlywed, we didn't have much money. So we couldn't, anything threw us off. And that, if we don't put it in now, it's just going to mean a larger increase later. And if our goal is to not have larger increases, $80,000
In a $64 million budget.
is not going to add much. And that
do
would be
25%
something that we're adding
position,
to
you
our
have to do
safety of
one
our
for
community.
5 years.
You're probably right.
I'm just saying, there's always an argument to be made for if we do a big increase now, we have to do smaller ones later. Well, that's true. Why not shoot really big? Let's go really big now and then we can go a lot smaller later.
No, the goal is to have the smallest increase possible and get our needs met.
So you want to have 5 community.
But it's
officers.
not because I propose
Yeah, I am
3
putting
more
you on the spot,
percent.
dude. Just
I think this year we can go with what we have. I really do.
He's pulling the party line. He's not gonna.
We are going to have to add staff, yes, as the city grows. There's no doubt.
And the
But we
city is
have,
growing.
because of those positions we have filled, we'll see impact from the police department having more staff this year, I think, as long as we keep them. As long as they don't go somewhere, as long as, I think, just to respond to your statement about,
I mean, I'm fine with adding one if we need it, but I also don't want to add someone and then we got nothing for them to do. I mean, honest to God, you know what?
You think West Jordan
hey,
Police has got that problem?
No, but I mean, he's saying they can do.
How many calls are on the
Just be
call
honest,
log
I mean,
on an
what do you
average
mean?
day at 3 o'clock?
yeah, we're a busy police department. I just think because of we're in a place now where we've never been. We have staff now that we have never had. Or we're going to have to add staff, absolutely.
For a city of our size, do we have the number of officers that would be good, best practice?
Again, that goes back to, there's lots of different ways to look at that. I think that we do a good job for our citizens.
Yes, I think you do too.
I do.
If you tell me you want a 5th person, I'm good with that. But if you tell me we don't need it, then you have to say we do need it or we don't.
When do you want to budget more officers in our
You wanna do it
budget,
next
I
year or you
guess
wanna
is
do it
what?
this year? Whatever you want, I will say yes to. Look at that. You want a lollipop? I'll get you one. I mean, seriously, if you tell me that we need that extra person that is budgeted in this year to serve our citizens,
He knows the
Great.
department more than
but
I
if
do.
you think we we're fine until putting in next year, then I will commit to you right now. I'll say do it next year, whatever you think is best.
I think we can do it next year.
I'll have 4.
I'm gonna go with what he says.
I can tell you the discussions I've had with the chief, and
They can use more, but like the mayor alluded to, all departments in our city could do more, because I don't know where that graphic went to, but
we're stretched thin.
we are a city that, Alan, can you pull up that graphic that shows where we are with per thousand with employees? Yeah, it was one of the beginning ones. That one. I mean, we already make do with less, and a big part of that is our police force. So we don't have the force, so we'll move on, but
I'm just gonna say, I think that's a big mistake, but
and I agree. So let's get the other 2 that aren't here and we'll have 4.
I don't know why
I'm
you're
just gonna
so-
give it to
I
what he
don't know
wants.
I don't know what, he's not gonna, let me tell you.
Should I ask the
basic-
chief instead?
He is not gonna tell you, I need another officer, because the department line has been we've done the budget the way we've done the budget, and he's not gonna say, yeah, I need, because they went through the budget process. He's not gonna say that. And you're putting him on the spot to say, I need another officer, and he's pulling the party line.
Let's put it this way. He's not going to say no if we allocate the funding for it. They're not going to say, oh no, we don't need that person. We're not going to hire them.
Council Chair,
They'll
may I
hire them.
may I speak to this issue? It's one thing to have allocated FTE positions. It's another thing to have them filled. The comp plan, the market plan, the COLA, the aggressive moves on staffing back in August have taken our police department from being, 125 allocated, but only 110 filled, to 125 allocated and 125 filled. That's been great. Thank you. Thank you. Allocated positions are very helpful, but to really see the impact on the street and the reduction in the lost times is having those positions filled, making sure we have actually full staffing as much as possible for the positions that we do have. And you've done a lot to help us get there over the last year, and the proposed budget will help maintain that. Thank you very much.
Are there, go ahead. No? Okay. Do you want to?
Sure.
Okay.
To throw another wrench in all of this, which we do have to think about, especially if the legislation is going to act on this. So keep that in mind. Senior property tax exemption. And looking into this, things like they must own the property for a year, must be 65. Thank you. Sorry. Must not make over a certain amount. Other ideas include just a percentage off or an amount off their property value. Only one property qualifies, and we can even phase this in as well. But if, like you said, the legislation is looking at this, this is something we're going to have to consider in our budget, if not now, maybe in the future.
What I understand what they're looking at is a deferral. So, Kelvin could say, hey, I'm old. I don't want to pay property tax now. And when my house sells, go ahead and take it out. So they're looking at it as a deferral. Is how they're doing it, so that when the property sells at the end of that person's life, then whoever is the
and that's an idea to add into it as well, because the people that are going to hit us the most as far as any sort of property tax increase are those who are on that fixed income, who are in that bracket. And if we can alleviate some of that, at least in our community, and keep our community healthy and keep them in their homes, that is something I would like to possibly propose for this. I know.
So mull that over. Okay.
Yeah, mull it
please. And then we do need to fill in our budget priorities. And so, Denise, what else do you need to know from us? Because we do need to maybe adopt this budget on Wednesday.
If you want to reduce the property tax by the 700,000, if you want to pay
Oh,
off the
the
debt.
state,
in
I
full.
didn't get back to Melissa's. Do we have 4 people that want to go with Melissa's idea of in one form or another, paying off that with reserves and then decreasing the proposed tax increase by the same amount?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think you go 4.
Okay.
Got at least 3.5.
Got a strong 3 point, like we have 3.38 or something residents per home in West Jordan. Got a strong 3.38. Okay. Are there any other things that you need to know? Okay. So we really need to talk about these. These were the main headings. Are there any of the main headings that you want to get rid of? So, and I'm just going to read them in case someone's listening. Enhance city aesthetics, enhance community safety, support employee retention and recruitment, sustain infrastructure replacement and maintenance, improve processes. And maybe one that we need to think about adding is not only sustain infrastructure, but sustaining staff long-term. So what say you?
I think that goes under employee retention.
Okay. So do we want to add something about looking out for employee, long-term employee? What do we want it to say? What we need to now, basically, we need to now come up with the verbiage that we want under these headings. Are there any headings you want gone? Shout it out if you do. Okay, there are none. What do we want under these headings?
Gotta be quick.
Well, I'll throw one out here on improved processes, and I think it fits in with some of the things that Deputy Chief Robertson was saying. It's also tied into some of the things that Tangie's is that we need to continue to support. We need to continue to support technology and technology upgrades.
Okay, so support technology upgrades.
Yep.
I agree.
By the way, that also means looking at the ALP contract, but that's a different story as we get to the other parts of the city budget.
Okay, anyone? Come on, Melissa, you've got something
Well,
to
I'm good.
share.
I'm good. I got, you guys wore me out, man.
You got your sales tax
You
thing,
wore
you're good
me
now?
out.
Okay,
Maybe I could
Okay.
recommend under employee retention and recruitment, the annual compensation study for all positions. So that we stay competitive.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
goal is to remain competitive.
annual compensation, perfect.
I would suggest under enhancing city aesthetics that we put down that we want to look at.
I want flags on red.
I'm thinking about looking at alternatives.
Okay.
By the way, Isaac, if we don't have the money in the budget and I'm willing to fund this as a try to figure out the pet project, at least as on a trial basis, is that back to life stuff to see if it truly does reduce the watering. I'd love to, if we need to put the $7,000 in for a test acre or two that they said that it would cost.
A small park.
I think that I would love, but for me, the budget priority would be to look at alternatives, sustainable, cost-effective alternatives to fertilize, but to maintain aesthetics. You know where I'm going? I don't know where I'm going with that. I don't know what the verbiage ought to be,
Yeah.
but you know where I'm going with
The
that.
enhanced aesthetics, sustainability of aesthetics.
And Isaac, it's the same thing as you go over here to the corner of 78th and 27th. And I'm going to say this, as a landscaper, I hated putting those stupid mounds in because I knew that they were hard to maintain. But then you look at our mounds, they're hard to maintain because the water doesn't get there. And it's like, well, do we want to rip out the mounds or do we want to put something in place of it? But you know what I mean? And so we should be able to find sustainable things besides grass on those mounds where the weeds grow or fill in. And so that's my thought here.
Do we want to add something about increased use of water wise?
Yeah.
Or local scape,
Yeah.
increased use of local scape design?
Sure.
Not to include native vegetation, grasses, things.
Well, there's some native vegetation that's pretty. There's some that's not.
It's got to be controlled and intentional and pretty.
I do have to say, I don't know if you guys have noticed, I went to Jordan Landing and some of their park strips are replaced with the fake grass. I didn't realize it until I got close enough to it. I was like, wait a minute, that's not real. So congratulations to them. I mean, I don't know.
From what I
they have
understand, they
small
water it anyway. No.
Does anyone have a
just saying.
suggestion for a goal for enhanced community safety? I would say create a long-term employee plan, staff plan. Create a long-term staff plan.
Agreed.
Police and fire.
Okay, that's got to be for both.
Yeah. Well, it's community safety, so I'll just put,
And Brian,
And sidewalks and streetlights.
yeah, that's safety.
Yeah, sidewalk and street lights.
Brian, we're telling her we're gonna give you people. You're not paying any attention.
okay, so we also want street lights. And what else did you say?
The street lights also.
Streetlights and sidewalks.
Oh, sidewalks. Well, you know what, you say that, Pamela, but maybe what we need to say when we say roundabouts is maybe we need to include looking at ways to make roundabouts pedestrian friendly, right? Because you can build a roundabout that has, in Europe, they have all kinds of them where you can walk in them.
I work for a
So,
company in
right?
Europe and been there many, many times, and roundabouts are everything and everywhere, and major intersections and little, and they make it work and they're walkable.
I'll
Recently
invite you to come
retired
walk
traffic
in
engineer.
Daybreak because the roundabout that's right in front of Harmon's is very walkable. We
So-
are all walking to Harmon's on a daily basis everywhere and it's very walkable.
So we'll add that as one of our enhanced community safety, because you can have a roundabout that will be safe for pedestrians. And you can have one, maybe there was one once upon a time in a city south of us that wasn't so safe.
Safe walking routes.
That was a
That's from
football.
Zach. Safe walking routes.
That's true. Wasn't actually round, you're right.
It wasn't around.
Okay. How do we say that?
Safe walking routes. That's Zach said it.
Well, but I want to focus, we can say safe walking routes as well, but I want to focus on roundabouts because the whole idea in that area of our city where we're putting the plethora of roundabouts is to have, there's trails. We want the people to be able to walk around. So we need to make sure that our roundabouts are pedestrian friendly, right?
Yeah,
Are you okay with that?
I think that's it. Roundabouts are pedestrian friendly.
Okay.
I mean, plethora of
We'll just
roundabouts.
hire a bunch of community officers to stand in the middle of them.
You won't even hire a community safety person.
Yeah.
Had thrown out there.
I think with employee retention and recruitment too, something that's not wages. What else makes people want to work somewhere?
Corbin.
Yeah, right? I mean,
Everybody wants
it's
to
the,
work for
it's the
Corbin.
bald head guys. I'm saying.
Oh,
What is it though?
really?
This
You know.
year, so this year, let me turn my mic back on. This year, Zach, I think you're right. And what we probably ought to do is include that with the remodel and for future focus, we're gonna put the medical clinic in.
Oh, that's right.
So do you want the medical clinic? Do you want that under your support employee retention and recruitment?
I think it's also a financial sustainability issue, but I think that's an employee retention as much as financial sustainability.
Under sustain infrastructure replacement and maintenance, do we want to just, I know we've asked for 5-year plans and they've been doing much better at that.
Maybe we could
Do we
put
want
something
to-
like intentional long-term plan for CIP maintenance or transfer to CIP so that we can,
Well,
or a policy of some sort, or
I like intentional long term. What do you want the rest of it to say, team?
I was gonna say we need to buy 6 more Kubotas. I knew that would make Kaylee mad.
Oh, buy 6 more Kubotas.
Kubota. It's a tractor.
It's a thing I didn't feel was needed in a prior budget.
Got it.
That's why I said that.
I know why you said it. Nothing but harassment here tonight.
Kubotas are little tractors and 4-wheelers that utility vehicles.
It's like a side by side, basically.
Oh, yeah, I'll put that in there. Those are kind of cool.
Anything else under improved processes? And Mr. Anderson, you're welcome to chime in here because I know you're big into plans and processes.
What I'm hearing sounds actually great. I think just broad. I don't know, you need to get into specifics, but in all my training, earning my Institute of Organization Management, my master's, and then finance.
Hey, I don't need your life history.
I'm just saying,
Checklist. So shut it.
I'm just saying, having systems and processes and planning gets the best results.
Thank you. Okay. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add here? Here is what we have so far. Under enhanced city aesthetics, we have look at sustainable, cost-effective alternatives, increase local scape designs, design use. Anything you want to add there? Flags on Redwood Road.
No, I just, when we're talking about.
Well, that's how you hang the flags, Melissa, is you put up the light and then you put the flag there.
South Jordan, please, on Redwood. I mean, it's just so you come right into my store and it goes black.
Well, it's because of the billboard.
Oh, it's terrible.
But when I'm also talking about sustainable alternatives for city aesthetics, I'm also talking about exploring things like solar powered. I know they're more expensive now, but the cost will come down. Solar powered street lights, hint, solar powered flagpole lights. Never mind.
Solar powered building.
Okay, so we've got that. All right, under enhanced community safety, create a long-term public safety plan.
Yes.
Does that indicate that we're staffing plan?
Yes.
Should we add staffing?
I think you should add staffing.
Yeah, so do I. Good minds think a lot.
That's what I said originally. I wrote that down.
Maybe I did. Street lights, sidewalks, safe walking, roundabout, pedestrian friendly. Roundabouts, pedestrian friendly.
And safe walking routes.
And safe walking routes. Yeah, that's okay. We got that. Then under support employee retention and recruitment, we've got annual compensation study and medical clinic. Anything else?
Annual softball.
Softball game. Okay. Under sustain infrastructure replacement and maintenance, we only have one intentional long-term plan. Do we want to specify that it's in 5-year increments? Do you want something more specific there? Or do you just want that?
Yeah, listen.
You good with just that then? Okay. Under improved processes, we're really lacking. We have 2 words, support technology.
I think we've been doing that though, really, with all
Support
the added stuff we've been doing.
technology upgrades.
I can fill in some of the blanks because there's a lot of technology requests that have gone on in the budget process for efficiencies. So we can specifically identify those. Or come
So
up with
are
some
you
language.
good with what we've given you?
I am.
Our members, are you good with what we've come up with?
Yes.
Thank you for your work. Is there anything else someone would like to discuss? Or is there anyone that has prepared something to share with us that we
I
would
was
like
going
to
to say,
hear?
we have 11 minutes. Can we talk about council budget?
We can.
So all your discussions about the department budgets in the general fund, is there any other discussion or? we're just done. I mean, I don't mean done. You know what I'm saying? Is the general fund pretty much discussed or are, okay, so what, our next work meeting, then I'm going to prepare the special revenue funds and the utility funds.
Well, let me ask a question first. How do you want to proceed? Because clearly what myself and Mr. Anderson came up with was not what you desired. So what do you desire for our next meeting? This is what I was going to have. One of them was the utility funds because we have a council member that would really like to discuss, and you fill in the blank because you know what it is already that's there.
Free dumpster program.
I wanted to high five you, sir. Chris isn't here.
I know, but at the next, he would really like to discuss that. And so I've asked that we have that as part of our work session next week. So it just seemed right to do the utility funds next time.
I'd like to know where we're at with the contract for the Arts Council. And I tried to talk to Rob about that a little bit earlier.
That's not really a budget thing.
Well, there's 60 grand in the budget for it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So we need to know.
But if we
Yeah.
need to modify, I think there was no disagreement. We needed to amend the contract.
Rob, that was what I was talking about.
Yeah, it depends on what the question is. The current contract, the way it's structured is that before March 1st, the Arts Council is to submit a proposed appropriation request to you. They are also supposed to do their annual accounting for the prior 12 months. After that, then you decide how much you want to appropriate for the upcoming year beginning July 1st. And it's completely within your discretion how much you give them. There's no set amount. The first year, there was an obligation to 66,000 and change, which is what had been committed. But in it's a 10-year contract. But in subsequent years, there is no commitment from the council of any specific dollar amount. And then if you really don't like the contract the way it's written, you can terminate it within 30 days. But there's no obligation for you to give them anything in any given year.
I thought we were looking at amending the contract anyway.
You can if you
Isn't that, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the direction that we gave, was to amend that contract.
If there are specific issues you want amended, yes, we can.
And I think we listed those out.
You did. It's on my to-do list is work on that contract.
Okay.
That's all my questions.
It's one of the things I'm
So-
going to ask an assistant CAO to work on.
So I guess, do we want to leave that 60,000 that, or whatever? Well, I don't know what page it's on. Denise, do you
It's in
know?
isn't it in the non-departmental?
No. Thanks, anyway. Such a nice.
It's on page 170, Denise. Well, it's 169 and 170 in it.
And without amending the contract, you can place conditions on that now. If you want a different financial report, if you want it dispersed in a different way, you can do that without amending
Did
the
we get a
contract.
grant request from them by March 1st? For how much they want for next year? Because we're supposed to, right, Rob? That's what's in the contract now.
Nobody has,
Yeah, that's in the
nobody
current
has
contract.
followed any of the contracts.
That's what I mean. That's why I want.
Well, but that's why we were talking about.
But did
amending the
we
contract.
get something?
Are you at, we
we
got
get a grant
requests for fundings for their previous years.
But we haven't got one for the new
Got a
year. coming.
request for the next
Oh.
year's appropriation. No, I don't believe so.
But that doesn't
So-
mean we can't.
So
No,
just a sec, let me clarify. We will adopt this tentative budget on next Wednesday, but that doesn't mean we can't make these changes still.
You can amend the budget all the way until you adopt a final, absolutely,
Okay.
to the last minute.
So you're gonna make the changes we talked about tonight, though.
Yes.
for the next-
Okay, so is there anything else anyone wants to discuss? I think Kelvin has something. I can't see what page he's on though.
No, this was the non-department, this is the non-departmental, but
Okay.
at some point in time, I want to go through department by department. There's a couple of things that concern me. Some of it may be just a broad fell swoop that says supply budget can't increase more than 3. There were some supply budgets that went up way massively.
Okay.
I'm not talking about the passport budget.
No, you're fine. I actually did the work for you because you asked me this last year and the year before. So I am ready for you with,
It's coming for you.
with all of the ones that, like our, travel, training,
Yeah.
department supplies, da, da, da. So you and I'd be happy to talk with you and we can go through that easily.
So how about we do that? It seems to make sense to start at the beginning of the budget, go to the end. How about instead of what we discussed, let's start there, but let's be ready with at least the solid waste discussion for that part.
Okay, so do we start with the solid waste and then go budget or department through department?
I'm okay.
Which
if
is
we
what
do
I
all the,
prepared for tonight.
You're okay to do that?
We may have
Utilities
enough, we
first.
may have enough time. And
Okay,
if not, we'll just pull out the axe and start hacking.
okay,
Because there's a couple of things in this budget that concern me that we've allocated in previous years and we've not spent it. So why spend it and why not shift it to something more important? And there's a couple other things in here. I'll just throw it out right now on the non-departmental. We're spending $100,000 for lobbying in Washington, DC. I haven't seen any benefits for that in a couple of years. I get the state lobbying efforts, but 100K is almost 1% property tax increase. So we have to have discussion about that and maybe the citywide surveys and.
Council, that lobbying for the federal one, that's brand new. We have never done that yet. So
Okay, well,
that's why there's no results. We want those results. And we think that's a good way
I'm
to get
willing
there.
to say it in this tight budget year with a big tax increase. We don't need to spend $100,000 on a federal lobbying. And I'll go on record on right now and say, no, well, I don't want to do any federal lobbying. I won't go into the state of our congressional, US Congress, but never mind.
okay. So are we okay to go within or no, what are we doing? The utility funds next time. And then if we get done with those, then we'll proceed tab by tab, basically.
Yeah.
Does that work? Are you okay with that?
Next meeting after that, we finish with the tabs.
Okay. All right. Thank you everyone for your time. I appreciate you being here with us, helping us to understand, and we will get through this.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, probably.
I'll move to adjourn.
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, we're adjourned.